Hey guys, first regardsman here, and so I'll be talking about all the enemy factions you want to see in Space Marine 3. Now, a little while ago, I did put out a community post asking people what factions they want to see in the upcoming game, and there are about 500 comments on this now, and this will probably take me a long time to read. I'll be honest, I was not expecting this many people to comment on this post, but hey, I really value my time that much, so let's go through all of these. So number one, we have Chaos, Emperor's Children, or Iron Warriors, and for Xenos, Necrons. Now, I'm not really a big fan of Iron Warriors, but Emperor's Children would be pretty cool. As far as Necrons go, this makes a lot of sense for Space Marine 3, and they would be a cool horde faction if done correctly, because the way that Necrons work is they have like a lot of fodder units in their actual like horde setup on top of some really cool elites that are like the overlords of the faction, and that would be a pretty cool mix if they do it properly. But this is Saber Interactive, so we will see. And as far as like Chaos Legions go, I would personally prefer to see something like Black Legion, but Emperor's Children and Iron Warriors aren't really a bad choice either. Now this guy says, I want all of them, but I'm telling you fighting Tau battle suits would be peak. I'm telling you that fighting Tau battle suits would not be peak. Tau are like such little range guys that are like mostly elite enemies that just shoot you from a distance, and Saber Interactive has already shown that they cannot do range properly without making it obnoxious. So unless they like redesign how a range faction works in general, Tau really don't have that many melee units and be very obnoxious to fight them in my opinion, but we'll see what they actually do if these guys actually show up. This guy says Necron plus Nurgle or Drukhari plus Slaanesh. Necrons plus Nurgle would be pretty cool. Seeing Death Guard or something would be kind of neat, though they are very, very tanky in lore compared to a lot of the other Space Marine factions. But we'll see how they actually do them. Hopefully they actually make them like a melee focus. Because I'll say this, I think like the melee combo loop of Space Marine 2 is pretty fun. If they just improve it a bit for Space Marine 3 on top of some like more melee factions, that could be really, really great. And as far as Drukhari and Slaanesh go, Drukhari are a really cool faction. They're very well represented in Rogue Trader, but they're also Slaanesh based like fundamentally, and really Games Workshop doesn't really like touching on Slaanesh all that often if they can help it. They obviously did for things like Warhammer 3, but as far as like their frontline games like Space Marine or even like Tacticus, they just kind of like allude to Slaanesh. Actually, I have no idea in Tacticus, but definitely in Space Marine 2, I don't really see them putting in like Slaanesh into this game, let alone 3, but maybe they will, we'll see. Orks, Tyranids, and a melee-based chaos band like World Eaters or Night Lords. No Thousand Suns, please. Orks just make a lot of sense for sure. Orks were in the first game. Orks are also just a fundamental horde faction. They are like the horde faction of 40k in general on top of Tyranids, and they say a ton of funny shit, and they have great units for it. And Tyranids here, we're probably going to see a bunch of reused assets in Space Marine 3 anyways, so I really, really do expect we will see Tyranids no matter what, and probably Thousand Suns, but definitely Tyranids. And as far as a melee-based chaos band like the World Eaters or Night Lords, the Night Lords are really cool. World Eaters especially. I do like the World Eaters. They're pretty cool, and it'd be fun to actually fight like a melee-based chaos faction for once. Now, this guy says Death Guard and Drukhari. Once again, I'm not sure if they'll add Drukhari, but Death Guard could definitely be cool. I think Tyranids are still my favorite. I'm glad you think they are your favorite, because the Tyranids will probably be in Space Marine 3. This guy says World Eaters, Death Guard, Necrons, and of course Orks. You know, if we're going to see a lineup, this is actually a pretty good one, especially like this end here. Necrons and Orks, I expect this is what we will actually see in Space Marine 3, but Death Guard and World Eaters for sure would be fun too. Necrons and Drukhari, a lot of Drukhari fans here, kind of shocking. This guy says, I want to see a War Dog in action so badly. Now that would be cool. Eldar, Necrons, and Emperor's Children. So once again, Necrons and Emperor's Children's fans. Now I will tell you guys, I did cheat. I controlled F through this whole thing and saw like 300 mentions of Orks and Necrons or something like that. So a lot of people do want Necrons and Orks for sure. You know, it just makes a lot of sense. And as far as Eldar go, Eldar are a super cool faction. They're not always hostile to humanity. Honestly, humanity is more hostile to Eldar at times, but it would be kind of neat to actually see them interact, see if they actually work with us at times, because even though the Xenos are pretty much purgeable in all 40k settings for humanity, Eldar, as far as like the Xenos go, they are the most chill overall if they can actually help it. Sometimes they are assholes, but Eldar are pretty unique in that aspect, especially in games like Rogue Trader. While just like that, they're done with Space Marine 2. Well, they're working on Space Marine 2 with like a skeleton crew, but Space Marine 3 is probably where their main dev team is. This guy says Gene Stealer cult for sure. Feels like the most engaging narrative possibilities while maintaining the threat of a horde. There are a limited number of factions that can believably field fodder that I think would be fun to fight. Necrons and Meat Scarabs, and I think that would suck. It might mean scarabs, but we'll see what they actually do. They could have scarabs be pretty fun, depending on how they do them. This guy says, most Chaos chapters don't have a lot of renegades guard around. I find Orks tiring. Well, that's unfortunate, because you're probably going to see Orks eventually, either in this game or the next one. You know, we'll see. Space Marine 2 might actually add a new faction at some point. I'm not really going to hold my breath for that, but they do have extended support for this game for sure. And this guy says, Adepta Sororitas, but corrupted by the new Chaos God Slanesh. All right, this guy's a gooner. Bro, Necrons. Yes, Necrons would be cool. Gene Stealers and Tyranids and World Eaters. It would be cool to see the Gene Stealers added to the Gene Stealers added to the Tyranid roster, especially since, like I said before, they would probably be reusing the Tyranid assets they have in this game, and Gene Stealers having like an actual little model addition. Excuse me, what am I saying here? Gene Stealers having an actual model addition to the lineup we have for Tyranids would be quite cool. And World Eaters, that's a pretty go-to melee faction for the Chaos guys, so that's a pretty good choice too. Imperial Guards and Space Marines, that's just the same thing we have here. Orks are obviously Orks. They are the fundamental Horde faction for sure. Personally, I like to see Titus fight a Blood Angel of Death Company. That's a cool fucking idea, is having Titus fight an actual Death Company that thinks that he's Horus. That'd be a cool setup. I would like to see more chapters in the actual campaign other than like Ultramarine Blueberries, but we'll see what they actually do there. This is actually a really neat idea. Someone should send this to Saber. I love Tyranid. Space Marine 2 is a pretty game, but Darktide does the Warhammer universe a lot better. It's darker and the aesthetic is more hardcore. Tyranids in those settings would be insane. I like parts of Darktide, but Darktide is like entirely in a hive city, and not even like the cool part of a hive city for the most part. It's like purely in the worst dredges of a hive city. That's kind of the whole point. But I think they definitely have different looks. And as far as like which game looks better, I mean, it's pretty obviously just Space Marine 2, but some of the aesthetics in Darktide are definitely good. Xenos, Tau, Orks, and Necron. Please no Tau. Please no Tau. That's just my personal opinion. Orks and Necron can stay though. Death Guards, Black Legions, and Emperor's Children for Chaos. A lot of people want to see Emperor's Children. Now this guy says Black Legions. I definitely want to see these guys for sure. They just have a really unique lineup. There's a lot of stuff you can actually see with them compared to all the other Chaos factions. Would be pretty cool. This guy says the boys, of course, because you know Orks. Saber Interactive Dev Team. Oh no, wait. Okay, so this guy's asking that he wants to see the Saber Interactive dev team actually show up for Space Marine 3. Maybe they will. We'll see what happens. There is currently a skeleton crew on Space Marine 2. The Necrons need to show up as a Space Marine 2 DLC. I'm not going to hold my breath for that at all. But as for Space Marine 3, it needs to be the Word Bearers. The Sons of Gilliman and Lorgar have long-standing beef with one another. As for Xenos races, it'd be nice to see the Orks again, but now with better graphics. But on the other hand, I too would love to see the Dark Eldar. Now, Drukhari would be really cool. And as far as Lorgar and the Word Bearers would go, I am curious to see if we will see more of like the actual Ultramarine backstory guys, especially like Gilliman, because we had Calgar in this game, and seeing Gilliman show up in the next one is like kind of like the next logical step for Ultramarines. But like I said before, I really do hope we get to see more chapters outside of just Ultramarines, because Ultramarines are cool, I guess, but they're just kind of in everything. Though they did kind of write the book on being Space Marines, so it does make sense. And as far as Lorgar goes, Lorgar is kind of a pussy. I'd rather see Magnus for sure. But as far as the Xenos, this guy is saying, Drukhari and Orks, I mean, Orks with better graphics would just be amazing. And they also be super fun to fight. And Orks also talk shit like nobody else, and they're a pure faction. I'm not too into the lore, but any faction that uses Psyker powers to some degree would be cool. Just not teleporting away every 5 seconds. Well, I mean, you probably want the 1,000 Suns at that point. You just want like their actual sorcerers to show up, because the only sorcerers we actually see in Space Marine 2 are like the lesser ones. And it's kind of hilarious that during the Obelisk mission, they sent like some bum-ass sorcerer to like guard the most important object. It's like keeping a Lord of Change on the field. But that's really more like an asset limitation for sure. But yeah, I would like to see librarians in this game. That would be cool. Necrons, of course. Necrons are pretty fundamental. Doesn't Fulgrim have personal beef with Gilliman? Space Marine 3 doesn't need to include the primarchs, but it's way overdue. We get some Emperor's Children in a game. Emperor's Children have kind of been neglected. We see more Nurgle stuff overall than like, well, at least recently we have, in things like Chaos Gate Demon Hunters and stuff like that, and Darktide. But I wouldn't mind seeing a Fulgrim fight Gilliman, or just see a Primarch in general. It's been a long time since like we've properly seen a Primarch in any like high budget 40k game. Honestly, I can't even think of like a high budget one. We saw Gilliman briefly at like the beginning of what was it? I think it was either Chaos Gate Demon Hunters or the Battle of Fleet Gothic Armada. But either way, yeah, I would like to see Gilliman for sure. I think Space Marine 3 should focus on the new war for Armageddon, which involves Orks, World Eaters, or the Pariah Nexus with Necrons, Black and Vashtor's Mechanical Legions. Those two wars could feature other Loyalist chapters alongside the Ultramarines as well. Armageddon has Space Wolves and Black Templars, Pariah Nexus has Blood Angels and Dark Angels. You see, I like what this guy's thinking about because I would love to see more chapters. Personally, I like to see the Black Templars like on a crusade. I would also like to see some conflict between the Loyalist factions, because even though they are all loyal to the Imperium, they do not always work together that well. So it'd be kind of cool to see like Space Wolves have to like contend with the non-Codex compliant, or even like the Black Templars and Space Wolves have to contend with the Ultramarines who are like super Codex compliant, and these two don't give a fuck. So that'd be kind of neat. But or Space Marine 3 could just stick with the fourth Tyrannic War because it fits the gameplay so damn much. Having those Tyranid hordes is so damn fun. Plus, it's not like we've seen every Tyranid. We've only scratched the surface all. This is true. Even the Karn effects we see in game, he's like one variant of like multiple. So it would be really cool to see more of them. Then have the Chaos threat be Emperor's Children. Since Fulgrim is back and would definitely like to send his sons to harass Gilliman's sons. This is true. If you're unaware, guys, for the tabletop, Fulgrim did recently get like a $300 new model, so that is pretty up in the forefront of the lore for 40k. And as far as Tyrannic Wars go, yeah, Tyranids are very much in the forefront of the story of Space Marines, not Space Marines, 40k in general. So seeing them again, especially when they already have all of these assets in this game available for Tyranids, makes a lot of sense. So nothing to give that one a heart. I actually like this suggestion a lot. Either way, the main thing I want to see in Space Marine 3 is Primarchs. Give us some cutscenes of Gilliman or Fulgrim, please. Also Terminators, please, and Librarians. Okay, this guy and I are just on the same page. That was good to see. Chaos, Slaanesh, Khorne, or Nurgle. I would love to see Khorne because Khorne is just cool. You know, kill for Khorne, and Blood for the Blood God is just kind of like the whole thing about Horde factions in general. Orks or Gene Stealer cult. I imagine Gene Stealers would be just part of like the roster for some of the map portions in the Tyranid battles, but that'd be kind of neat for sure. Anything that bleeds, basically, true, because Rubric Marines are all dust. If the combat system isn't reworked, then World Eaters, Orks, and Gene Stealers would be pretty good and fun. Would also like some DLC campaign, maybe as an Inquisitor, Astartes, who has to deal with heresy, corruption, and cults. What I really like, though, is a Sororitas-based Souls-like or Skyrim type RPG. I know I've seen a lot of people talk about this game being like a Souls-like. It is kind of similar to Bloodborne. And as far as the combat system being reworked, it would be kind of cool to see like some additions to it for sure, but I'm not sure if they'll actually rework it. This guy says Drukhari, they are underutilized and are terrifying when done right. They were all over Rogue Trader. Like there's an entire like act in that game that's purely for Drukhari. So you haven't played that, you should probably play it to just like experience the Drukhari portion, because honestly, it's one of their best representations in a long time for sure. And Rogue Trader is probably like the best overall 40k game in my opinion, at least when it comes to like capturing the world. But yeah, Drukhari would be pretty neat. This guy says Orks because I love the Orks, purest race in the galaxy. They just want to have a good scrap. True. For traders, Emperor's Children, the opportunity to have an Ultramarine kill Lucius the Eternal and then turn into him on the ship would be wild. Plus, Noise Marines rocking out and Demonettes would give Slaanesh some appreciation that he's never gotten in any of the games. There's a reason that they pretty much never put Slaanesh into anything. It's because he's bad for optics. Because, you know, let's say you have like a board meeting and like a bunch of people are like, all right, what chaos faction are we going to put in the next game? And they're like, we're going to put in Slaanesh. And like the CEO, or not the CEO, but like, you know, your PR guy comes in and is like, okay, sure, let me just Google image search Slaanesh for like 5 seconds. You're like, wait a second, guys, this is the god of fucking. And they're like, no, he's actually just like the god of excess. But like any board meeting is going to be like, we don't care about like your nerd shit, it's the god of fucking, and we're not putting that in our game. That's kind of how people just talk about it, like for memes. But honestly, that's why you don't see Slaanesh a lot. You do see Slaanesh in things like Warhammer 3 and stuff like that, but overall companies are kind of afraid to touch it in like their mainline games, especially once they put a ton of money into, unless it's like kind of niche like an RTS or a CRPG like Rogue Trader, at least in my opinion. Necron's easy, they already teased them. Yeah, Necrons probably be in there too, for sure. Eldar, Necrons, pretty standard here. Necrons, but in reality, all of them. I doubt we'll see all of them, though it would be cool. Black Legion and Necrons being main. Necrons to be enemies at the beginning or end, but be allies somewhere in the fighting when Chaos shows up. Maybe only temporary allies to put down Chaos, but enemies in the beginning and end. That'd be kind of cool. Necrons are a strange faction in the sense that they will team up occasionally. Like also Necrons don't really work very well with each other at times. They are one of the Xenos factions that kind of like they are very, very separate and like their end goals for the most part. the Silent King's pretty put together. Well, I say put together in quotations, but yeah, for the most part, they're kind of assholes. Or a Gene Stealer cult that is an enemy at first, you fight and nearly beat them, but the Patriarch at the end, before he's killed, warns of a greater looming threat, Black Legion, and it is impossible to get reinforcements after the fighting. Black Legion would be cool. As far as Gene Stealer cults go, I mean, Gene Stealer cults are like before what we're actually doing here, which is the Prime Tyranid invasion, and we already had like a full-on Tyranid invasion in Space Marine 2, and I imagine we'll see that again in Space Marine 3, just like maybe like another hype fleet. The Patriarch pleads the Ultramarine Strike Force, maybe Blood Angels too, to let it live and to call for the Tyranid hype fleet specialized in fighting chaos, with the knowing promise that one day the other hype fleets will come to these worlds and protect it with any chaos nids. I'm pretty sure we're just going to see like a full-on Tyranid invasion again, but that would be kind of cool. Noise Marines, Slaanesh Demons, Demon World, Mutant Cultists. Seeing an actual Demon World would be fucking crazy. We almost got to see that if they didn't close the obelisk, but yeah, Demon Worlds are pretty fucking whack. Mutant Cultists would be cool, especially if they didn't just like pop when you walk through them. That would just be Chaos Spawn, though. Chaos Spawn, and we will be seeing those in the actual Space Marine 2 update pretty soon. Orcs, Necrons, Nids, Elves, Chaos. They're not Elves, they're Eldar, okay? Fake fan, just kidding. Necrons, obviously, because we saw them already hinted at, and Elves for just for Chaos, we already have Chaos, so pretty standard. Orcs for the epic voice acting and bombastic nonsense, true. Send them all for the Emperor, definitely. As much as I love Necrons, they will be another Thousand Sun situation, ranged enemies, zero motion. Really depends how they actually do them, because you don't have to make them super toxic. You could also make it so like their laser beams are just a little bit more spread out. Like there could be some actual like in-game reasons. Like let's say, for example, the Hive Tyrant we fight would body a normal Space Marine squad if it weren't for the fact you dropped the fucking bridge on him. So you could do stuff like that, the Necrons, like have them be like they just woke up or stuff like that, or like their brains are just getting like aren't quite all there, because not all the Necrons are the same for sure. Du Bois, Wog, yeah, everybody wants to see Orcs for sure. Necrons and Dark or Eldars, seeing Dark Eldars and standard like Craft World Eldars would be pretty funny if they're just like fighting each other, though I don't really expect more than like 2 or 3 factions. I imagine we'll see like one more faction like Necrons on top of a Chaos faction on top of Tyranids. That's my personal expectation. So it's probably going to be something like Orcs, Necrons, and Nids, and then maybe a Chaos faction if you have 4. Yes. Eldar / Tau. Dude, Eldar / Tau would be kind of obnoxious, because like Eldar do have some range spam. They do also have like some super OP power sword boys though, because if you're unaware, Eldar have like heightened technology. A lot of their stuff is basically warp based with a Wraithstone. Is Wraithstone, I'm pretty sure that's the name of it, if I'm remembering correctly. I've got my brains farting. But point is that they have a bunch of psychic-based equipment, but they can't really tap into it properly unless Slaanesh eats them all, or eats their souls, as she does. And as far as Tau go, fuck Tau. Necrons, yeah, for sure. Night Lords would be cool. Night Lords are also unique in the fact that Night Lords are like the only Chaos Marine faction, or one of the only Chaos Marine factions, that they aren't actually Chaos worshippers. They're just traitors to the Imperium, because they don't like the Imperium, and they teamed up with they didn't really team up with all the other groups, but they want to kill the Imperium because they basically got fucked over, and they don't really care about Chaos all that much. Eldar and Necrons definitely would be pretty neat. Drukhari and or Necrons. I see a lot of people want Drukhari, that's true. They haven't been represented that much in games for sure. To be honest, none. I want to get my money's worth from Space Marine 2 first. I just feel like with the amount of revenue this game generated, they could definitely have more of the skeleton crew working on this title. Instead, we get content drip fed to us at such an agonizingly slow pace. It's honestly baffling. Several people in my friends group have even quit playing the game as they feel the pace of content release is far slower than it has any right to be. Well, part of that's because this game's monetization scheme is like there's no incentive for the company to do it, because like once you bought the game, I mean, most people got their money's worth from Space Marine 2 and they've already moved on for sure. But as far as like people coming back for the game, this game has no MTX in it. It's just like DLC packs, and without MTX like Helldivers or like other Modern Life services have, there's no incentive for the company to actually release content. At least like as quickly as they could. And even with games that do have an MTX like Dark Tide, they don't always release content anyways. Drukhari, Tau, or Necrons, fuck Tau. As for Xenos, Race, Eldari, or Drukhari, and from Chaos, there's a lot to pick still. I would say for Chaos, Black Legion, Night Lords, or World Eaters would be pretty cool, and maybe Word Bearers, but I want to see World Eaters because they have the coolest armor in my opinion. But we've had Lord Calgar make his appearance. Now in our next hour of need, the Lord Commander himself arrives to aid us, Rebute Gilliman. As for enemies, Necrons or Orks again. For Chaos, how about the Word Bearers, the final boss being us assisting our Primarch and banishing Lorgar and his first captain back into the warp. Now, like I said before, Gilliman is the natural like follow-up to Calgar, but as far as the Chaos faction goes, I imagine Tzeentch will show up again in some way, because there's obviously like some big ooga booga like Tzeentch plot going on in the Space Marine story, so that's probably what we're going to see for sure. If it's the same pattern that I like to see, Tau as a Xenos, because Space Marine really isn't dark enough and it needs some moral ambiguity. Additionally, if you factor in their auxiliaries, they have a very varied roster. I'm just not a big fan of Tau, man. Like, fish people, they just ain't my jam, okay? I'd rather have Tyranids, and we're probably going to see Tyranids, because I imagine Space Marine 3 is going to be an asset flip, partially. Nurgle, specifically the Death Guard for Chaos, is relevant due to the recent conflict with Ultramar, Gilliman, and the Ultramarines. There are a lot of things that are in recent conflict with Ultramar, Gilliman, and the Ultramarines, because they are in basically fucking everything. Though I wouldn't mind seeing, like, a Grey Knights cameo. Maybe they can actually do the Grey Knights some justice. That would be kind of neat. Death Guards and Necrons. A Death Guard for sure would be pretty interesting. I'm just worried how they'd actually do them. Like, I do like Death Guard. I'm just afraid. I'm afraid of what they would do to the Plague Marines. And honestly, I'd like to see Death Guard and Darktide first. Slaanesh for reasons. We know your reasons, Uwu Commander. Or Uwu Comrade. Interesting. Chaos, Slaanesh or Nurgle, Xenos, Necrons, or Drukhari. A lot of Drukhari fans in here, but I understand. Drukhari are pretty cool. Necrons and World Eater. Imagine a Berserk against us. World Eaters plus like a mixed faction of Tyranids all fighting each other. That would be pretty neat. I do wish we had more maps in Space Marine 2 already that had like a multi-faction fight, kind of like what Vox Liberatus has, but unfortunately we'll probably have to wait for like some new operations releases, or maybe like for Space Marine 3 to actually see that. World Eaters, and give us a robot girly man versus Angron final fight in the campaign. Now, Angron could be a cool as fuck boss fight, but also Angron is way out of the power scale for like most actual like standard Space Marines. Honestly, pretty much every single one of them. If I had to bet like one single like basic bitch Space Marine, or I say basic bitch Space Marine, but let's be real, like Caldor Drago is not a basic bitch Space Marine, but that's who I would bet on to actually fight him. I mean, he did fight Mortarion, but like it was kind of, he had a lot of help. But still, Caldor Drago's like, he's built different. He's built more like a Primarch the way he's written, which is pretty stupid. Or Mephiston, he would be pretty strong too. Librarians in general, pretty OP, but I digress. Death Guard and Necrons. I will accept nothing else. You may have to accept something else, but that's unfortunate. It would be a perfect mirror of one another, overflowing pestilent life via Nurgle, and cold calculating life turn machine via Necrons. It would be cool. It's actually a good point. I didn't really think about it this way. I also expect, like I said before, to see Tyranids as like a mix in here. I imagine we'll get an extra faction because they've already put a lot of money into Space Marine 2, and probably have even more assets by the time it's all finished up. I want to see some other Xenos like the Tau, Necrons, or Kroot. Hell, maybe even the Orks again. I want more enemy variety the most, whoever they choose. Yeah, Orks again. I actually, guys, I really do think we will see Orks, because Orks are just loved by the community for sure. Orks and Tyranids, this is probably the most likely. Necrons for sure. Okay, you know, let's just tier list this right now. Which factions are the most likely to be seen? Orks, Tyranids, and Necrons are like what I would bet my money on top of like Thousand Suns or like any other Space Legion. But like these three, Orks and Tyranids for sure, and Necrons are like a big maybe. Drukhari and Emperor's Children. Guys, you know, I don't think we'll see Drukhari, but a lot of people want to see them, so who knows? There is a lot of time until Space Marine 3 comes out. It has no official release date yet. We just know it's coming. Wog, yeah, this guy wants Orks for sure. Necrons for sure. Necrons and World Eaters or Death Guard, but secretly, I want Orks back. Why secretly? Tau to suffer from range damage even more. That's not what we want here. Necrons and World Eater. It seems a lot of people are on the same page, so hopefully Saber looks at this. Though I am kind of curious to see how much Saber actually has written for Space Marine 3, because the story is obviously going to go in some direction. You know, I did see somebody ask before, why is Titus in the campaign like immune to psychic attacks in the Chaos Taint? I think a lot of that's just like the God Emperor of Mankind is literally protecting him, because there is a portion at the end of the story where it says Rise, son of Gilliman, and I believe it was confirmed or like heavily implied that was the God Emperor himself and on the Golden Throne speaking to him in the warp. So there's probably something related to that like he is the chosen because he's the main character. That's just how it is. And you know, Space Marines written by Matt Ward are basically all like that. Aren't the basic Necrons slow? Some of them. It really depends. It also depends on like which tomb world they're from. Really want Death Legion with a nice graphics and close-up shot. Imagine the execution on Death Legion Marines, dude. It would be kind of cool to see Death Legion, but we'll see. I want at least 3 if I had to choose, and it would be Tyranids and Necrons. Orks, these are probably the ones you're going to get, so a pretty good choice there for sure. For once, I would like the secret villain to not be Chaos again. I mean, the secret villain is probably going to be Tzeentch again. Guys, that's probably going to be Tzeentch. I mean, we did see Khorne in the first game, but Tzeentch plot, that's kind of implied pretty heavily in Space Marine 2. Tau and the Gene Stealers cult. No Tau, I say yes to Gene Stealers. Let's leave you at heart. I want these Space Marines to do battle with themselves. Space Marine 3 therapy session. I mean, having like the guy mentioned before, Death Company versus Titus would be pretty cool. Necrons and Eldar. Yeah, Eldar would be neat. I would be kind of cool, like, see Eldar pop up as like a cameo where they just come out of the webway, and like that's kind of what they do. They just hit and run tactic, kind of like the Drukhari, just like less, evil in every way. I mean, Eldar can still be pretty big dicks. Like, they'll just ruin whole worlds to make sure their craft worlds survive. Because if you're unaware, Eldar have what are called Farseers, and they look like into the future, sometimes very far into the future, and they'll like let whole planets die to like save two Eldar babies or whatever it is, because they're kind of assholes like that. They value their species way more than other species, and that's kind of why they come into conflict with a lot of the other guys for sure. Hopefully they announce Space Marine 4, 5, 6. Yes, many Space Marines. Mid development of 3. Mid development would be crazy. Necrons, we've seen hints of their presence at the end of Space Marine 2, so that's a top one that I definitely want to see. Of course, it'll be nice to have Orks, Chaos, and Tyranid all present since they've been in 1 and 2. This is definitely true. Eldar or Tau, personally. Man, a lot of people want Tau. I'm kind of shocked because they're just like a range spam faction for the most part. They do have an extended roster, but who knows? They could always just expand upon them, or like just pick up some of like their lesser known units. Orks, Eldar, non-Tzeentch Chaos. I think they need at least 3 enemies in the next one. There's a clue in the name. I think there will always be Chaos, but a hard pass on range only like Tzeentch. Khorne or Nurgle could be good. Both the Orks and the Eldar have some good balance to fight against. Plus the Eldar, you can have really good extremist variety with the Aspect Warriors. Eldar, I don't know if Saber Interactive is talented enough to pull off an Eldar faction. If I were to say, like, if Fatshark came out tomorrow and said we're dropping Eldar, I'm like, okay, Eldar are going to be probably like a wild faction, very hard to fight, but also have like really interesting units. I feel like they don't really know how to properly pull off a unique faction like the Eldar, because Eldar, they just have so many aspects to them, because like half of them are trying to not use their psychic potential, because if you're unaware, once again, Eldar are an inherently psychic race, which is what humanity was turning into, or is currently turning into, with all of our psychers, but they can't properly tap into the warp unless they want to draw the ire of she who thirsts, who wants to eat all their souls after like the whole Eye of Terror shebang. Death Guard, Necrons as elite enemies, Tau, Dark Eldars to punish these perverts. Yeah, whoever the fucking Adeptus Sororitas guy was earlier. Yeah, Dark Eldar coming for him. Orks, Gene Stealer cult. As for Chaos, Word Bearers of the Black Legion. Maybe even a Space Hulk with Tyranids inside. That would be kind of cool, actually, in like fighting a Space Hulk. That'd be kind of neat. As far as Word Bearers of the Black Legion, that would be Black Legion. I'm always up for Black Legion. Another Black Crusade would be pretty neat. But previous enemies from 1 and 2, plus a new both Xenos and Chaos to make new gameplay modes interesting. I mean, I think that's pretty much guaranteed to happen, or at least we hope. Whatever shittery going on in the Astartes YouTube series, that's what I want to explore. Yeah, the new Astartes YouTube series looks pretty cool, and they actually dropped that. I don't know if it's actually dropped yet. I think it's still coming out. When that comes out, yeah, I'm excited. Tau and Necrons, Xenos, Necrons, not Splatty, Chaos, Death Guard for Splatty. I mean, Necrons can be splatty. You just have to like make their like armor destruction look cool and like have like the green disintegration. That'd be kind of neat. Though hopefully they don't put like the little guys that hide in pocket dimensions and snipe you. They would be assholes. Wait, are you saying you were the author of Space Marine game? Then tell me Valgar was in Necron world, he'd still be alive. I don't know. I'm not the author of the Space Marine game. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'd rather they finish making Space Marine 2 and fleshing out. Just saying that for the past year, Saber has just been doing the basics to bring the game to a proper release state, minus a horrible netcode and loading screens. I think that this game is in a better place than it's been in its entire life cycle. I don't think Space Marine 2 is a bad game by any means. I think it's a ton of fun. Otherwise, people wouldn't still be playing it. People come back every update for a reason. And honestly, the general opinion of Space Marine 2 is it's fun, and like the people that have been consistently playing it the whole time are the ones that have the biggest problems with it for the most part. But as far as like Saber goes for like bringing the game to a proper release state, there could definitely be better companies, but Saber's not the absolute worst. So they do kind of flub on the lore at times. Drukhari, pretty neat. Necrons and Word Bearers, Tau and Corn, Word Bearers and World Eaters, and Necrons and Orks again shouldn't be less but more factions. Sometimes less is more if they properly design them. Just look at like the Nurgle factions in Darktide, though I won't lie, they are getting kind of stale. Darktide could use a new faction for sure. Has to be Necrons, pretty much unlimited potential for boss enemies, and their endless legions make sense gameplay wise. Any Chaos faction besides the Tzeentch, Space Marine 2 made me realize how boring they were. Kind of miss when Chaos would scream insults at the top of their lungs like they did in Dawn of War. You know, some of those Chaos Space Marines that aren't dust, they do scream some crazy shit. They also do it in Battlefleet Gothic Armada. As far as actually seeing like new factions in Space Marine 3, we'll see how much money they put into Space Marine 3. See, my expectation is that Space Marine 2 was like a sleeper success, so they were not expecting it to pop off as much as it did, and because of that, they're probably going to put more effort in Space Marine 3 is my expectation, and Games Workshop is really pushing them to do that, I think, and that's why they announced Space Marine 3 so early, because they want people to play Space Marine 2 with their drip-fed content all the way up until the release of Space Marine 3, and I imagine that's the game they want to put most of their effort into. Deathwatch, Raven Guard, and Black Legion, or Raven Guard and Black Legion. Imagine if the devs dupe all of us and we actually play as Chaos Marines in Space Marine 3. There's no way they're doing that. Leandros, I want to see him fall to Chaos and you get to take him out. This is probably gonna happen. Leandros is the chaplain. He's actually a pretty good chaplain, but he's very much blinded by his hatred for Titus, or like his fear of Titus, or just his suspicion of Titus, and he'll probably fall to Chaos because of that at some point in like an attempt to like stop Titus, or just like his own hatred for him. Because like that really is the beginnings of like your fall to Chaos, is giving into like negative emotions, or just giving into your emotions in general, which Leandros is pretty bad at. I like to do missions with allies similar to Siege, but in operations, like a small squad of Mechanicus and their bots to assist us on the new missions against Necrons, so that Mechanicus could hack their mainframe and destroy them, or at least sabotage them. Having missions with allies would be cool, but I fucking hate the Cadians in this game. I mean, they're kind of cool, but they're very obnoxious to actually play with, so maybe not, but having more Mechanicus stuff would be interesting. Leagues of Votann. Well, we are definitely not going to be seeing Leagues of Votann, Peter, but it would be pretty funny if we did. And if you're unaware what the Leagues of Votann are, they're basically space dwarves, and they're barely mentioned at all these days. Orcs plus World Bearers, at least Word Bearers, but yeah, for sure, that would be pretty neat. Everyone. Yes, for sure. Necrons and Dark Mechanicus. Ooh, I didn't understand anyone mention Dark Mechanicus, but yeah, that would be pretty cool. I think World Eaters and Emperor's Children would fit the combat style the best. If I had to pick a Xenos race, I'd choose Orcs. Anything else is just a waste and probably end up like the Thousand Suns with far too many ranged units. Yeah, unless they change the way the ranged fights actually go, it would be pretty awful. But yeah, it would be pretty cool to see the actual Emperor's Children or World Eaters. And this guy says Word Eaters, and this guy up here says World Bearers. So truly the duality of mankind, but I understand it's a typo. It's kind of funny. This guy says the ironic part is given that the Blood Ravens and Templars were in Space Marine 1. I ain't reading all that. Space Marine paragraphs. Necron could be interesting during waves. You have to take out whatever is facilitating regeneration. Orcs, of course. I like killing the Nids in Space Marine 2. I really enjoy a dual campaign similar to Transformers Cybertron games, and be able to play a campaign as Chaos. Maybe an Alpha Legion cell working to thwart another Chaos faction, or to also disrupt a Necron Lord's Orc War Chief's machinations. Having an Orc War Chief fight a Necron Lord would be fucking hilarious. Now, there was a point in like a little Necron, it's either a Necron or Orc Codex, where it talked about a Necron Lord, like a Tomb Lord, gave a or like on a Tomb World, he gave an Orc War Chief of a WOG like his Doomsday cannons, or his Dooms cannons, and just blew up the entire Orc WOG on accident. They tried to fire off one the first time, so that was pretty funny. It would be kind of cool seeing like try to pick up Necron tech and stuff like that. World Eaters, I agree here. World Eaters or Black Legion. Necrons for sure. First off, keep the ones we currently have and add to them. I imagine we will see Tyranids for sure. They might get rid of Thousand Suns. That's definitely maybe, because Thousand Suns are pretty fucking boring in this game. But after that, maybe add Necrons and World Eaters. Death Guard Necrons make the most sense. The League of Votann, another guy wants League of Votann, but we ain't gonna see it. Gene Stealers, could definitely see some Gene Stealers for sure as part of the Tyranid roster. Weirdly enough, Drukhari, they have a ton of melee units. I feel like it would fit the melee combat style of the game well. Drukhari would also be very fast. A lot of them be like, I hope they properly represent how fast the Eldari actually are, because it's said that like just the basic movement of an Eldar is like unsettling to a human, and Space Marines to Eldar are basically like a giant gorilla with a shotgun. Like they're scary like a gorilla is, but they're not like very fluid compared to them. A closer representation would be like a Primarch or a a Custodes. Here this guy says, I'm assuming it would have to be Necrons, given all the bits dropped about them in the Space Marine 2 campaign. Yeah, that's pretty likely. Orks and World Eaters, Eldar, and Emperor's Children. Emperor's Children, Slanesh Demons for Chaos. They are at least represented in 40k games. Necrons as a Xenos, and you can have Eldar, Dark Eldar in the mix too. If the developers want to be more extra, it makes sense lore-wise. The thing about, like I said before, the thing about Slanesh is like a lot of companies, and like just the way people talk about Slanesh, is like everyone just treats it as like the sex god, and a lot of companies just don't want to touch that, unfortunately. Necrons at the very minimum, or well, actually I should say companies want to touch it is for like having it in your frontline game. I just feel like they want to sell as many copies as humanly possible, at least for an M-raid game. And a lot of people just think Slanesh is like kind of weird, which is kind of unfortunate because the Slanesh demons are pretty interesting. Especially they're also very well represented in Rogue Trader. Once again, there's like a Slaneshi cult that is done pretty tastefully. So that is pretty good. Necrons at the very minimum. Orks, Xenos factions will be Necrons. About Chaos, there's a good bunch of good options. Khorne for lots of melee enemies. Night Lords would be an interesting Dark/Terror touch. Nurgle already has representation on Bolt Gun. Yeah, that is true, but Bolt Gun is like, you know, it's kind of like a very, very arcadey game, and a lot of people didn't even play it. So having more Nurgle, like in a proper Space Marine game, would be kind of neat, though it is also in Darktide. And Slanesh always is a bit more troublesome to implement. Yes, it is, unfortunately. And a lot of that's just like public perception of Slanesh. And even when you look at like how they implemented the faction into Warhammer 3, it's just a lot of people just expect like, oh, Slanesh is going to be like the gross faction, but it's really not. Slanesh has a lot of cool things in lore, and some of their cults especially, and Emperor's Children and stuff like that are quite interesting. So in my opinion, Khorne and Night Lords are the most interesting options, but Slanesh could be the surprise as they don't have much representation, and they took that into account in Space Marine 2 with the Thousand Suns. One thing about Thousand Suns is like Tzeentch is a pretty cool chaos god. Honestly, Tzeentch is my favorite chaos god because he says like he has the most interesting plots, or has the most interesting potential plots for the most part. I mean, Nurgle, Khorne, and Slanesh are also interesting, but Tzeentch is the kind of guy that would kick his own guy into a portal to figure out what's in it, which is pretty funny. For a minimum, third fame should take everything from the first two and improving upon them, so it should include all previously included factions. I think it will include all the previously included factions we have here, and probably whatever extremis they drip feed into this, and then they'll probably just like tune up the graphics and like tune up other things, maybe like work on the models a bit more, new textures and new abilities for them. But besides that, I think it's going to be it's going to be a huge asset flip for a lot of things, which I'm kind of fine with, because Space Marine 2, like I said before, it feels like Space Marine 2 is just like this sleeper success they were not expecting, and then they're going to come out with Space Marine 3, put all their effort into that, and then try to grow it like significantly larger than they did Space Marine 2, because Space Marine 2 got extended support. They were not planning on taking Space Marine 2 this far, but it's been so popular, and it's still popular, that they're taking it even further than initially intended. Eldar, Necrons, Word Eaters / Night Lords, Necrons, and Tau. Guys, why do you guys want to see fish? We don't like the fish guys. Chaos, Word Bearers, and Night Lords, tons of demons, melee units, and aura. The Xenos, Orks, and a very decrepit Necron Tomb World. See, that's what I'm saying. If you have like a decrepit Necron Tomb World, it would be more interesting, because they have like a lot more zombie boys, and you wouldn't have to deal with like the super ultra, like we hide in pocket dimensions and insta-kill your guys out, like the Necron death marks, I believe they're called. Very, very dangerous. Orks are always welcome, and Necrons would be cool, but definitely need a handicap. Yeah, Necrons have guns that would just casually one-shot a Space Marine. There's actually like one little short where like a Necron snipes a Space Marine. They're like, wow, he actually survived the first shot, and it's like a huge deal, because Necrons really are just kind of insane. Eldari and Battle on a Craft World. A Battle on a Craft World would be fucking cool. You know what I want? I wouldn't mind going to like somebody mentioned it before, like a Space Hulk or something like that, or even like a downed battle barge. So let's be honest, if you have a battle barge that's downed, you're probably fucked. But something like the Republic Commando mission where you're fighting Trandoshans would be pretty neat. Like you go into a ship and it's pretty much fucked, and like you slowly find out what factions on it, but I don't know how far they're actually gonna go in the campaign for stuff like that. Necrons or Tau, Tyranids and Orks. Yeah, definitely skip Chaos and have a Orc Nid Space Marine free for all. I'd be down for that for sure. World Eaters and Necrons, swapping the roles of which faction is heavily melee focused and which one is more ranged between Chaos and Xenos. Orks are great and these are my favorite, but Necrons were 100% up for the next game. This is true. Though we did kind of move off the Tomb World they were on, but there was also a lot like Chaos related on the Tomb World, and it seemed like Tzeentch was after like the Necron tech to open up that big fat portal, or it was the one that the Necrons closed. I won't lie, it's been a while since I played like the full campaign for Space Marine 2. Korn or Slaanesh, but I doubt they have the guts to do Slaanesh though. Yeah, they probably don't. I'm gonna be real, no Chaos at all. I'm sick of Chaos, and in 2 games they've been the fun killer. I also feel like they just picked Nurgle because everyone always just picks freaking Nurgle lately. It clears at Vermintide 2 and Darktide. Instead, I'd like to see Necrons and the return of my big green boys, the Orks. They're never not fun to fight against, and they could do so much with Orc banter that would be hilarious. As far as Chaos goes, Chaos is the great enemy in Space Marine, not in Space Marine, in 40k for humanity. Not having Chaos is just like, it's not going to happen. Also, the good old Titus is his whole like taint, like his resistant to the warp taint is like a huge plot point. So not having him interact with Chaos makes no sense at all. And Leandros is probably going to fall to Chaos. So we're definitely going to see a Chaos faction again. Death Guard, Necrons, and Eldars. Yeah, probably. Well, maybe Death Guard. Death Guard could be cool. We'll see what they do. Necrons or Orks, Necrons, Chaos Emperor's Children, Xenos Necrons, Orks, World Eaters, and Corn Demons. Corn Demons. Yeah, having a bloodletter, like a proper, fat, enormous bloodletter would be terrifying. I do kind of hope, like, I'm curious what they'd actually put out as a boss fight. I hope we get more Chaos bosses that aren't just like range spam hell brutes and stuff like that, but we'll see. Eldar, I fucking hate elves. Well, that's unfortunate. Death Guard and Iron Warriors, as Chaos corrupted Alpha Legion attack on a space station turns into you helping another rogue Alpha Legion group sent by Omegon in a race to stop an artifact before Abaddon, the Black Legion, show up, and Leandros still hates you. I don't know if we're going to see 2 Chaos factions. I imagine we'll just see 1. I want a mix of Darktide and Space Marine 2. Character controls are a little different between Reject and Space Marine. More for Rejects, and they can summon a squad of Space Marines if they lose and do an objective. I don't think they're ever going to do that. Essentially a weapon system. I don't think this is even the question. We're just asking what factions we're going to have. Though I guess this kind of fits it. I don't know. I don't think they're going to do that at all. Optimization. Word Bearer makes the most sense as enemies for the Ultramarines. That is true, though we did see them fight Space Wolves in Rogue Trader. Necrons and World Eaters. 2 just came out. Upgrade 2 with DLC for Necrons or preferably Orks, then we'll talk. I don't know if we're going to see a new faction for 2. 2 is probably going to get like drip fed content with a new season pass, and maybe like 2 new classes, and then we're going to get 3 in like a few years. Necron and World Eaters. You know, actually on the note of them putting out like a new faction for Space Marine 2, they hardly add to the factions we have. I really doubt we're going to see a new faction, but maybe. We'll see what they do. Necrons and Drukhari. Given the power scaling, I wish we were fighting Nurgle right now. I think the Eldar or Tau would be interesting. I'm a melee guy, so I should be careful here. Yeah, to Tau, well, Eldar aren't too bad. They do have a lot of melee units. Tau are mostly range spam. It really doesn't matter to me. Just don't do what Destiny 2 did and reskin the same enemies. I hate when companies release a new game, but it's really just a large expansion for the same game with a few things reskinned. You know, personally, I don't really care about this at all. Like, I don't really mind just buying a new game if it like adds a new content on top of like some of the assets that were flipped from the old one, especially if those assets were like worth reusing, because I don't really mind it. Like, if the original factions like Tyranids are fun to fight and you just add to them in like a huge expansion, because that's probably what Space Marine 3 is going to be, guys. It's probably like a huge expansion of Space Marine 2, and I'm personally okay with that as long as they fix a lot of the because like the combat loop just needs like a few tweaks on top of like some new factions and more enemies to fight and some better weapon balance, and besides that, it'd be pretty damn fun. Emperor's Children and Drukhari, secret allies, Alpha Legion for some Leandros drama. Dude, having Leandros crash out over like Alpha Legion helping would be pretty funny. Orks, World Eaters, that'd be a good switch up of range and melee against other Marines. Yeah, World Eaters for sure would be cool. Yes, Night Lords and Drukhari, I think both would be fun to kill, and they could do some serious damage. Night Lords and Drukhari in the same game would be pretty epic. I just don't think we're going to see that in a mainline Space Marine game, at least not 3. Necrons for sure. World Eaters, one thing I wish we could be added is Custodes armor and customization. Well, Custodes, having just like Custodes armor wouldn't really make a ton of sense, because Custodes themselves are just way taller than Space Marines are for the most part, and also Custodes are just like a very, very different thing. It wouldn't really fit all that well, to be honest. Orks and Necrons would be cool. To be honest, I'm kind of over the Thousand Suns. I'll take any other Chaos Warband at this point. All of them. We should play as Grey Knights for added gameplay variety. Grey Knights hunting down Titus, only to realize he is a true Warhammer 40k Space Marine 3, and we end up teaming up with him to defeat the big bad. I think we're just gonna play as Titus again. That seems to be where they're going with this. But as far as Grey Knights go, Grey Knights, they're kind of controversial in the community because they do have like a lot of Gary Stu stories around them, especially Caldor Drago. But as far as Grey Knights go, for me personally, I do like Grey Knights. I just wish they were in more interesting stuff and handled a bit better. The only like game I really liked them in was Chaos Gate Demon Hunters. That's also like one of the only games they're actually in. But Grey Knights for sure would be kind of neat if we saw them pop up, or really any other chapter pop up for that matter, because I'm kind of tired of Ultramarines. I just want them to mix up the plot. If it's a Xenos invasion on Imperial Planet with surprise chaos in the second half, again, I'm going to be disappointed. Maybe start with the Chaos Invasion, then oops, woke up the Tomb World. You know, I actually kind of like this in the main campaign of Space Marine 2, is that like, you know, you're fighting Tyranids, and then it's like, oh shit, it's chaos, and then like suddenly all the Ultramarines are cut off, and what is basically turning into a demon world slowly, as like all the chaos, like Chaos Lord of Change pours through, and then Calgar shows up, and like all the Ultramarines on that planet were going to die previously. I just thought it was kind of neat and how they did that. Like that whole banner scene where they're holding off against the Tzeentch Horde was pretty cool. That was really well done, and probably one of the most interesting scenes in the entire game. So it depends how they do it. And maybe send us into a Space Hulk where we have to fight any number of weird things as we race to the Drukhari to acquire an artifact that turns out to be a super messed up man of iron that serves as the final boss. This seems more like something, you know, these weird things, these like wacky ideas are things you'd find in Rogue Trader. So I'll say it again for those of you who are still watching, that if you like 40k wacky stuff like that, a lot of that is in Rogue Trader. Stuff like this happens in Rogue Trader side quests all the time. That game is really, really well done when it comes to like touching on all the aspects of 40k lore. Night Lords and Xenos Orcs, either Death Guard, World Eaters, or perhaps Iron Warriors, and for Xenos, Necrons with a side order of Leandros becoming corrupt and getting wrecked, and perhaps a small appearance by the Primarch. We probably will see Gilliman, and we probably will see Leandros get corrupted at some point. Space Marine 2 devs executed by Imperial Guard Commissars, a little excessive, don't you think? Absolutely not Tau. Tau are an organized army, not a horde. If you were dropped against 100 Tau, it would mean total obliteration from the far line of sight distance. Also, Tau are mostly ranged enemies, only a few melee units from other races. Necrons would be good. Their basic units are horde-like, yet they have very interesting elites. Yeah, this is a good point that I mentioned earlier, that like their basic units are pretty much horde-like, and they do have a lot of really cool elites. And elites, like having elites break up your horde shooter is a huge part of the design of like properly designing your horde shooter. Because you have like a Dark Tide, every enemy in that game has a purpose, especially on that game's launch, for the balance is very different than it is now. And Space Marine 2 kind of tries to do that, and it works pretty well for Tyranids, but in Chaos, a lot of like the purpose of the Extremis is to lock you down to get shot at, which is not very fun. And as far as the Tau go, Tau are not a very populous race, and I don't really know why they would even show up for what we're doing in the Space Marine games. First and foremost, Orks, Dark Eldar, and then Necrons would be awesome. Slaanesh Chaos, since we dealt with Khorne in 1, Nurgle and Bolter, and Tzeentch in Space Marine 2. I don't think they're afraid to just like put in a ton of the same guys in every game they put out, for honest. Can we put all the factions and chapters in the Space Marine 2 first, please, for love of the Emperor? No, they will never do that. Anything that bleeds red. Killing Rubicon Dusk Hands is so unsatisfying. Maybe Orks for Savage Melee. Orks for Savage Melee, guys. Everybody wants to see Orks. Let's be real. Orks are cool. Orks just say stupid shit. They yell at you. They die of happiness because they fought somebody strong, and then you get to fight the war boss. And like honestly, let's be real. If there was an operation that was kind of like the decapitation mission where you fought a giant orc war boss at the end, that would be pretty epic. I definitely wouldn't mind having all 4 major chaos enemies in Space Marine 3. Imagine a 5-way battle. A 5-way battle would be pretty cool. I'm curious to see how far they'll actually take Space Marine 3. We'll probably know upon like the first trailer we get for it, like how, like what the grand scope is going to be for that game. But I'm expecting like mainly Tyranids at first, and like one other horde faction. Let's bring in Necrons and the Space Weebs Tau. I look more like Space Fish than Weebs, but I guess that's a kind of a descriptor. Necrons, I'm sure, not Thousand Suns at least. It's pretty boring to use the same faction for 2 games already. I mean, Thousand Suns, they could do them better if they like added some of the more interesting units. We'll see how the Chaos Spawn affect the faction. Who knows? You know, by the time Space Marine 3 comes out, all of the added enemies to the horde for like the factions of Thousand Suns and stuff like that might make the game feel a lot better overall for both factions, and when I have the same opinion on them. I care much about them reworking their gameplay loop, getting rid of the parry/dodge, and giving weapons some purpose before they think about making a new faction. I hope that they do. Well, I don't want them to get rid of the parry and dodge because I think it's fine. I think it just needs tweaks. But as far as like the weapons having purpose, most of the weapons in Space Marine 2 are definitely viable right now, so they definitely have a purpose. Something more meat-based, more satisfying to fight. I don't find the bashing of tin cans very satisfying. That's really just a lore thing. Like Thousand Suns are just kind of lame, unless you're like the greater sorcerers and maybe like Armin. But if we saw Armin, we'd probably all be fucking dead because he's like Mephiston level. And Necrons are just all in on chaos and Nurglites and Cornites. I think it's Nurglites, not and Cornites, not Corites, but all of it. Just a typo, I guess. Orks and something melee like Corn faction. My dream game would be a move to Creative Assembly. Be the move that Creative Assembly did in Total Warhammer 3 with Immortal Empires. We could have something like this in Space Marine 3 with all of the 6 to 8 enemy factions, like 30 operations versus any of these factions. That would be almost a perfect 40k game. I don't know if they'll ever do that. Honestly, what Creative Assembly did in Warhammer 3 of the Mortal Empires was like one of the greatest undertakings any company has ever done for like cross-game DLC. It was quite interesting for that, but I don't know if they'll ever actually do that for a Space Marine game. But I wouldn't mind it if they did. But it doesn't make sense for the operations to be in like the other games because the operations will probably take place at different times, so I kind of doubt that will happen. Chaos, World Eaters, Death Guard, Emperor's Children, or even better, Word Bearers, as we are Ultramarines, Xenos, Necrons, and Eldar, preferably both at the same time for some three-way battle royale. I imagine a three-way battle royale will probably happen, but anything beyond that, I would not hold my breath. Mushrooms, heart. The engine is specifically designed for horde enemies, so I think Tyranids or such Necrons could fulfill this best as the primary enemy. And I think there always needs to be chaos, so Nurgle for a change would offer excellent gameplay opportunities. I imagine we'll see Tzeentch again because they're probably part of the big Tzeentch plot. Tau for the melee, and Slaanesh. I don't think we're gonna see Tau because it's like they don't really fit the I mean, I imagine we see Eldari before we ever see Tau. Tyranids and Necrons, Gene Stealer cults, and Word Bearers, Emperor's Children, Slash needs some love, and that would be a more visceral story. World Eaters for good melee, and Necrons for technological challenge. I imagine, guys, so as far as Chaos factions go, just expect Tyranids again in the next one. Like, there's no way they're going to give up all their assets they made for this one. They might do it for Thousand Suns, but Tyranids, I don't believe that for a second. Necrons plus World Eaters, the Imperium. Leandros was right about Titus, and he turns to Chaos. Titus will never turn to Chaos. Leandros, on the other hand, definitely. Necron slash Death Guard. Chaos, Death Guard, and for Xenos, Eldari, or the Tau Empire. Why the Tau? Why do you guys want fucking fish people? I don't understand. Death Guard and the Empire of Tau. Okay, all the Tau fans are coming out now. Fuck Tau on tabletop and this game. Necrons. Gene Stealers are the only possible options since they said they wouldn't be adding any new factions. And since Gene Stealers are just Tyranids, it's still possible. Yeah, Gene Stealers probably would just be added to the roster of Tyranids we already have, like I said previously, and it would be pretty neat for that. I want First Regardsman as the enemy faction. I'd eat shit. I'd get like fucking bodied by like endless amounts of people playing and trying to kill me. I wouldn't enjoy that at all. Darkcraft World Eldar and Necrons. Yeah, maybe we'll see Drukhari. I think we'll see Drukhari before we see Slaanesh. I'll say that. Or like direct Slaanesh. With the current state of the game, any faction that has a combination of melee and range, but Orks seem fun. Orks we'll probably see that before any of these other factions for Chaos, like the crazy ones. Iron Warriors and Iron Warriors. I'm not a big fan of Iron Warriors. It's time for Necrons. I'd like to see the Emperor's Children be an interesting interaction. So what I've gathered from this list so far is most people want Necrons, which makes a lot of sense because they're in the end of this game. Emperor's Children, World Eaters, and things like maybe the Tau sometimes. This guy says, I want my 40k waifu. All right, the fucking more Gooners. Actually, is this a Gooner? I don't know who this is. Okay, maybe possible Gooner. I feel like we'll get an amalgamation of both old and new. I doubt they get rid of Tyranids for the next game. True, somebody said it. I'm glad. Since Saber specializes in horde wave enemies based on their work here in the World War Z game, I'd see any of the other Chaos factions, mainly Iron Warriors and World Eaters, since they're more geared towards melee. The other Xenos factions I can see being Necrons. Yeah, Necrons probably, but World Eaters I'd prefer over Iron Warriors personally. Emperor's Children, obviously the demons and Marines would have to be a bit on the light side. We have never really gotten to fight them that much. I think the big shooters. There's a reason for that because they hate putting Slaanesh in games. I'd say Chaos, Emperor's Children, or World Eaters, Xenos, Necrons, or Dark Eldar slash Eldar. I want Necrons to appear. Then for Chaos, I want Word Bearers, so a rowboat girly man can call Lorgar a big nerd. I wonder if that'll actually happen. Demons for sure, and orcs would be cool. They have they have Thousand Suns and Nids, so if they combine it, they could be peak. I have high hopes because they have a hardest part done, and that's the engine making Space Marine 2 look good. Space Marine 3 should focus more on factions and optimization. That's gonna be peak. That is true. That is the benefit of like Space Marine 2 coming out first and being like, you know, getting its own trip feed, is that they have a lot of assets to use in this game. They have the fundamentals for the next game built already. I don't expect the next game to like look crazy different from Space Marine 2, but it should have more. Like that's the main thing I want from it. Xenos, Necrons, Chaos, Thousand Suns again, or the World Eaters. This guy says Emperor's Children. As a huge Necron fan, not them. I love to hack up some town, have cool boss fights with the big crisis suits. Craft World Eldars and Emperor's Children. Craft World Eldars would be really cool. To be honest, I know that there would... Oh, excuse me. This guy says, to be honest, I know they were already there, but Orcs, in all honesty, because there's only one faction that doesn't put me to sleep other than Chaos, and half the time I hate Chaos anyways. People say that, like, oh, just because we had them in another game doesn't mean we won't have them again. Also, the other game we had them in was like 10 plus years ago, so seeing Orcs again, I think most people want that. World Eaters and Word Bearers. I would like Necrons and Death Guard, but I expect Dari and Slanesh. I do not expect Slanesh. We have not gotten a game of Slanesh, or a popular one at least, and you can't do Slanesh without the Eldari, and like Slanesh, not a popular game in some time. This guy, I can't even translate this thing. What should we see? As you were talking about separating in the memory, what are we talking about here? Okay, it's just a... All right. Anyways, there's no new faction. You translate the comment, you get a bot comment. How crazy, how incredible. Now, there's no new faction they can use that won't require a very serious rethink of how the game deals with ranged enemies and ranged combat. No one wants to fight Chaos in Space Marine 2 because of their boring gameplay. It's really because there's range spam fest. If they made the range fights way more interesting in Space Marine 3, that would definitely fix all the issues we have with range now. But for now, yeah, like, you are correct here to say that Thousand Suns are not very fun. Me, everyone, Word Bearers, they deserve the Emperor's Wrath the most. Leandros is like the faction of Leandros. He kind of is. He has that kind of aura for sure. Xenos, Town Necrons, Chaos Iron Warriors, Necrons, Eldars, Chaos, World Eater Berserkers make fighting Chaos fun because they're mostly melee. Having a proper, like, crazy melee faction for Chaos would be pretty cool. It don't matter, there'll always be one new existing enemy faction in Chaos. Orcs, and throw in some Dark Eldar, Necrons and Night Lords, Necrons and Word Bearers. People really want them fucking Necrons. What can I say? I want us to be a Chaos Marine that can face guard units and Orcs, while we can also still play normal Space Marines and face Chaos and Orcs. The fucking Orcs, of course. The Orcs are them. Death Guard and Gene Stealer calls. Find out all of them. World Eaters, Drukhari, Necrons, Death Guard, Necrons, Orcs, and then give me my Custodes. I doubt we'll ever see Custodes. You'll have them as like a cameo or something, but as far as actual playable, no. Necrons, do I have to pick? Yes. For Chaos, the Mighty 12th, Angron's Angry Boys. For Xenos, definitely Necrons, the walking toasters with the big green guns. They are kind of walking toasters, aren't they? There was a entire animated movie about like all of the kitchen utensils coming to life that you just unlocked a memory of mine of, but I can't remember what the name of it is. If anybody remembers the name of that movie, if you're watching that far in and you remember the name of the movie with the walking toaster, remind me. Orcs, man, nothing like killing Orcs. Necrons and Death Guard. Dark Eldar, Black Legion, Necrons, Orcs, and Tyranids. Necrons so scary and dark as fuck. And maybe we play as Sisters of Battle. We will never play as Sisters of Battle. I know it's canon for them to fight the Necrons. Sisters of Battle are strong. They are not as strong as Space Marines, even in power armor. They are not that close. And Sisters of Battle are like, there's no reason for them to even like really be here, or let alone us play as them. Drukhari and Death Guard. Anything that spills vapor such does field enemies are not fun. That is true. Orcs and any not range spam Chaos. Like, why have we gotten that in both games? Because they want to have like one faction is melee, one is range, but they don't know how to do range combat systems at all. I personally like to see possibly 3 factions like Tyranids, World Eaters, or Black Legion and Necrons, Emperor's Children and Necrons. It seems a lot of people really, really want these 2 factions for sure. We should get a prequel Titus and Deathwatch so they can have Tau, Orcs, Necrons, and the Bugs. Having more Deathwatch at some point would be cool. We only got to see Deathwatch for like 5 seconds in this game, and it was really that they all go into the Tyranid world to drop the virus bomb into the atmosphere, and like, it's Deathwatch in time, and they jump down, they all die to Hormagaunts, and his entire team is dead before you even see like a proper warrior, which is pretty funny. But I digress. Emperor's Children or Night Lords, but World Eaters would be awesome for the Xenos Necrons. It gives some Khorne crazy motherfuckers. Yeah, Khorne guys would be pretty neat. I know it's another Chaos faction, but as a Dark Angels fan, I'd like to see the Fallen. I don't think we'll see the Fallen. I think we're far more likely to see like a far more like Khornite faction or even Emperor's Children first. Necrons / Plague Marines. Just a side note, I would see a PvP VE game type as well. I don't really think though. I think they're probably going to drop PvP for the next game, to be honest, because nobody really plays PvP in this game. And I'll be real, hot take, I think the PvP for this game is like wasted dev time. Necrons would be cool for like the little dev time they actually have on this game with their skeleton crew. Necrons would be cool. Maybe the Word Bearers, Necrons, and World Eaters, Emperor's Children. If Space Marine 3 is going to continue to be super focused on the Ultramarines and we're escalating to working with Calgar, I could see a narrative where we cross paths with Guilliman and there's more to do with the Mark of Calth of fighting Word Bearers. As far as escalation goes, I think it's very likely we see Guilliman in the next one, mainly because Titus seems to be like the chosen of the God Emperor for some reason. If like what the ending line was, where he's like, Rise, son of Guilliman, is actually the God Emperor in this game. So we probably will see Guilliman, because Guilliman did speak with the God Emperor at one point, like through the warp, through like little bits and pieces. So having that be part of it would make a lot of sense, to be honest. I think World Eaters for a melee-focused faction, and Eldari for a more range-focused faction could be a lot of fun. Eldari would be a more interesting range faction than the one we currently have, for sure. I'd love to see Necrons, Eldari, Dark Eldar, and Emperor's Children / Slanesh, World Eaters or Necrons, all of them. I want to do Emperor's Children, Necron, Eldar. Let's see, Nurgle, Tau, Necron, World Eaters. Man, you guys really fucking love your Necron, guys. Eldar would be interesting, Tau too, but it's early. I want to fight the boys, Wog. Yeah, that's me. I personally, guys, I want to see Orks, okay? I want to see Orks. I want to see them shout out, like, mean things at me. I want to see a goblin get launched off my screen. That's just me. Imagine the kick animation that the Zangors have, except you just, like, kick a goblin. And he screams, as goblins do, because goblins are funny as fuck in all the games are in. Literally anything but fucking chaos again. Yeah, I get it. The eternal enemy must purge the heretics, blah blah. But for once, I just like to be Astartes against a force that isn't driven by chaos, or at the very least, the Drukhari if chaos has to be involved. Chaos is definitely going to be involved, because Titus's immunity to the warp taint is a huge plot point. No chaos, please. They're just so shit to fight. Unfortunately, you must fight chaos. I miss Grimskull. I want to be in a Wog again. Yes, rip our boy Grimskull, champion of mankind. Well, the champion of Wog kind. Well, the champion of fungus, really. Orks would be awesome, but for something new, Necrons. Edit, I really enjoy fighting against Tyranids, so I'd like for them to return. They definitely will. I'm sure of it. You quote me on that. Guys, it's confirmed because I say it is. Tyranids are coming. Necrons, Orks, and Tau in that order. Games Workshop, pricing staff. They're the faction you have to fight. I mean, you're fighting that faction in real life every time you buy a new model, which I don't even know what their model sales are even like, but I know I'm considering buying the Fulgrim model. I really am, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I don't even play Emperor's Children, but that'd be kind of cool. My heart says Drukhari, but I think Necrons fit the Horde shooter mold better. Tau 2 range, Tower definitely 2 range. Necrons for Xenos. Yeah, you guys love your Necrons. Iron Warriors, special creates Sorcerer faction. Yeah, we aren't going to see any Gojos in this one, Orion. No more Thousand Suns. I dread every mission they are in. So do I. Bro, I just want to play Sisters of Battle, please, or those Assassins. What is up with these fucking gooners that all want to play Sisters of Battle, guys? You're not going to play a Sister of Battle. If you want to play a Sister of Battle, play Rogue Trader, because he's plays Argenta. That's the closest you're going to get for now. Necrons and Death Guard. Orks. Just so leftists don't cry. I'm not reading this one, guys. This is an apolitical stream. Apolitical video. Tyranids, Orks, and Necrons. Orks, the Emperor, Night Lords, but that can't really happen. World Eaters, I guess. I know people want Necrons, but if you think Chaos was hard, good luck. I would think Dark Eldar would be far more melee oriented, which would be more engaging. Emperor's Children, Chaos, Corner Slanesh, both would rock the melee combat, but I hope for Slanesh, since every other faction has had good representation in a Warhammer 40k games with them. Xenos, Necrons, and more specifically the Flayers. The Flayers are kind of fucked up. That would be kind of cool to see them. Orks are the best, and Necrons for the novelty, kinda. And because there really needs to be a Chaos faction, the Emperor's Children. If they wanted to keep the massive hordes of enemy for the Xenos, I would say Orks, but since they were already in Space Marine 1, it would be fun to go with Necrons or Drukhari. Less of a debate for Chaos. I want Word Bearers. Eldar, or maybe some Emperor's Children along the Slanesh Demonettes. Orks, gotta love those cheeky green gits. And Necrons would be badass. Orks and World Eaters, my god, you guys love your world eaters and your orcs. I should have said factions and why. Then I'd also have like 500 more essays to read. So maybe I should have done that. World eaters, Khan the Betrayer, Kabana. That would actually be pretty cool to actually see like a proper. You know what, guys? I would like to see a bloodletter. It's just me. Yeah, I mean, we probably get shit on by a bloodletter, but it'll be cool. Not a bloodletter. What do you call them? A bloodthirster. Not a bloodletter. The game devs for the assault class. I'd like to see the Black Legion and Necrons personally, even though they've done a million times now. Nurgle forces just work great for horde style games, so wouldn't mind Death Guard either. Night Lords, Necrons, World Eaters, Gene Stealers, civilians caught in the middle of getting squished. Greenskins. This is the first time I've actually seen anybody in this call them greenskins and not just orcs. Pretty funny. Foul, pointy-eared Xenos, Eldari, Drukhari, and Chaos Slaanesh twats from Emperor's Children to Stomp Hard would be nice. New Chaos faction, new alien. This guy says Necrons and Death Guard. This guy, Night Lords and Eldar. I would see some Tau, but gameplay-wise, I fear it'll be boring. Your fears are probably right. I think there will have to be some Chaos faction because of Titus's history. Very true. Night Lords would be cool to fight. Tau would be fun to chop with a chain weapon. Would be, but they'd probably be annoying as fuck until you actually reach them with a chainsword. Leandros just so we can punch him. I just don't see Tau. Mass to long range units just don't fit in Space Marine 2's gameplay a lot. Also, their main range is one of the oldest now. Tyranids and Thousand Suns kind of only work because they updated the older designs themselves, especially the Tyranid Warrior. Ever since Space Marine 2, I want to see a Tyranid Warrior kill team kit, which is, I guess, exactly what Games Workshop wants. No point further advertising Tyranids or Thousand Suns. Already got their sales boost from Space Marine 2. Space Marine 2 probably sold better than like 99% of models anyways, but as far as Tyranid Warriors go, we're definitely going to see Tyranids again. There's no way we're not. People keep saying Necrons. I find them would be exactly the same as a Thousand Suns, but infinitely worse. I mean, it depends how they implement them, but Thousand Suns, yeah, like Tyranids, or excuse me, the Necrons could just be like a shooting gallery where you're fighting a Thousand Sun guy that keeps regenerating, which would be pretty obnoxious, but they could be handicapped. Necrons, obviously, and of course, World Eaters. Wouldn't mind some Space Elves too with the Eldar. Necrons and World Eaters, easy. Word Bearers, all of them. Drukhari or Tau. Noise Marines, you gotta have something to replace Biowars being the most irritating thing to fight. Please no. World Eaters, Orks, and Tau. Gene Stealer Cult, Necrons, Orks, Necrons. Man, you guys fucking love your Orks, Necrons, Dark Eldar, and Emperor's Children. That's what I've learned from this entire thing. Emperor's Children would be nice. Here it is again. Orks, but in darker skin and heavy armor. Having a black orc would be pretty cool. I'm pretty sure they are. I haven't actually... Were they even in Space Marine 1? The black orcs? I'm not sure, but I want orcs back because they breathe personality. Necrons would be the big bad. I don't really know how they would make Necrons the big bad as opposed to Chaos. Chaos is almost guaranteed to be the big bad, but we'll see. I want to have all-out warfare with the World Eaters and Iron Warriors. I'm done with the Great Deceiver. I'm done with Nurgle. I'm done with Orcs. I'm done with Tyranids. Please, for the love of God, give us different Xenos or Khorne. The developers mentioned Tau and Necrons, Tyranids and Necrons, Eldars and Necrons, Necrons with all you guys. Dark Eldar, here it is again. You guys fucking love your Drukhari. I did not know there were this many Drukhari fans. Anything that makes us block and parry stomp their faces off, spank you very much. Definitely Necrons since it was teased in Space Marine 2 campaign. Orc, Necrons for Xenos, I'd say an Orc return as well. I feel their personality is lent to better characters as rivals compared to Nids, Orcs, and some Tau, Necrons, and World Eaters. Not Chaos. Had to pick. I want to fight Orcs, fighting Tyranids, and Eldar in the background. Would love to see Orcs again, but for sure, Necrons, this community has been big on having them in. For Chaos, I'd like to see Word Bearers and Emperor's Children. They need to do Necrons properly if they're actually going to have them in, and Orcs will probably show up anyways. Drukhari, Orcs, Necrons, or more Nids. I know it's 40k and Chaos is the big deal most of the time, but I like to see them take a backseat for a game. They won't. If Space Marine 3 had a Horde mode, definitely the Orcs, Eldari, and Tau. Necrons, besides bringing both factions for Space Marine 2 back, considering the way the game's mechanics works, Orcs and Black Legion, any Undivided actually would make a lot of sense. Necrons, Eldar, and Tau don't really work because it would just be more range spam. Dark Eldar and Homunculus Covens would be interesting. Homunculus Covens would be interesting. They are in Rogue Trader a little bit, as many things are with the Drukhari, but I didn't even think about that in an actual Space Marine game. Space Marine 3 needs operations with different factions. Give us Eldar, Tau, and Orcs as playable factions, with Dark Eldar and Chaos as PvP variants. Upping the scale of the franchise story would be awesome and a great segue to another 40k series and story down the line. Would love to see some team-ups to take down the big bad Tyranids, Chaos, and Orcs playing both sides. I'll say this again, all of them, stop with choosing one legion to fight against. It's dumb. You kind of have to because that's not how game development works. Let's see, we have your Death Guard and Necrons. Tower mentioned in Space Marine 2 and casual banter such conversation alongside Necrons. I personally love to see 3 particular factions make a return slash feature: Orks, Necrons, and Tau. Fuck Tau. It entirely depends on what factions Games Workshop are pushing. I'd wager either copy paste what we have now, or they will go with a new take on the Orks and Space Marine 1 and play more on Titus being tainted. Good opportunity here to introduce. Well, the whole point is Titus is not tainted. It's just that everybody like thinks he is, but he actually has like a warp immunity, and he's protected by the Emperor or some shit, something like that. A good opportunity here to introduce Abaddon to new fans. The Black Legion, obviously, they are undivided, so you can represent whichever god you like here, and chuck a Wog in for good measure. That's true. Abaddon is a pretty big deal, especially after what happened to Acadia, as they say. There may have been a Blackstone fortress that had a certain impact on the Cadian fortress world, as one does. And chuck a Wog in for good measure. Now, from a gameplay perspective, Necrons and Tau would suck to play against. Imagine Chaos currently in Space Marine 2 would be more annoying. It really depends on how they implement them, but I'd rather have Necrons than Tau. Orks for horde, cleaving, and lots of blood. Eldar, any for fencing and psychic shenanigans. Honestly, just more chaotic battlefields. Give me 2 or 3 different factions at a time, all fighting against each other or forging alliances. Would give us more enemy variety, and also be a much more interesting story and lore-wise. Horn demons would fit into the combat system really well. Orks would be great too. Drukhari and Necrons could work if you cherry pick the more melee heavy units. Basically anything except Town would be a fine addition. I don't fancy talking or taking all those on those rail rifles while playing the assault. It would be pretty awful. All of them. Orks are the most fun. Orks by the Necrons would be baller. Orks, Necrons, Leandros, the faction. Anything that spills blood, Tyranid Orks, demons other than the Thousand Suns. Yeah, so Khorne basically. All of them. Wouldn't mind Tyranids again, but maybe one of the Xenos factions and different Chaos, probably Word Bearers or the Orc / Tau. Man, I like it just saying all of them. This is a non-answer, guys. You have to pick. I want to say Necrons, but I think they would run into the same problems as Thousand Suns with too many ranged enemies that chip away at you. I think the best choice would be to either bring back Orcs or do World Eaters if they want to do Chaos again. Everything which bleeds enough. It would be cool if enemies from both Space Marine 1 and Space Marine 2 made a return, so Tyranids and Orks and Thousand Suns and the Black Legion, but to return alongside 2 new factions, those being the Necrons and any other Chaos faction that haven't been in the game yet. Having most, if not all, Chaos factions, and then Tyranids, Orks, and Necrons we will definitely not get most of all the Chaos factions. Not an enemy, but I would love to see a Custodes. It would be cool to see them cameo, but actually playing as them, I doubt it. Eldar and Tau. The Egyptian theme is not just Necrons. I mean, they're kind of like well, I guess the Tomb Kings are way closer to like straight up Egypt, but they're pretty much the same thing. But Necrons, my beloved. I'm gonna put that one in the thumbnail. The boys. Swarming enemies, more Tyranids, Necrons, flayed ones. Yeah, this is a good point. Someone mentioned this already. Flayed ones are pretty much like the super ultra fucked up Necrons that have like a virus of sorts, kind of like ultra zombies. Very dangerous and like way less intelligent overall than the normal Necrons are. So they could be pretty good. It could have like a decaying, decrepit tomb world like somebody mentioned as well. That'd be pretty neat. But not really interested in 3. It's only been 10 months since launch. Relax the attention spans. Maybe an expansion with Orks would be cool. The same way Monster Hunter World had Iceborne, but Monster Hunter World also had a way better development cycle in this game. Necrons, Sinestro Necrons. I would see Drukhari make a big appearance, and I match them with the Death Guard for some poison-based mechanics. Necrons with any chaos. Tyranids, Orks, World Eaters, and Necrons would be a dream lineup for me, you, and many other people in this list. A hot take, I'd rather have a guarantee of no more Chaos Marines or regular chaff enemies be lightly mowed down in the hundreds than a guarantee of any faction. Space Marine 2 made Chaos Marines a joke, when each one should be a mini boss for regular Ultramarine. Maybe not the Rubric Marines, they're like the only ones that are like kind of properly fucking stupid, which is why they picked Thousand Suns, but this is true. This is also true for Tyranids, though, that like every Tyranid warrior should be able to comfortably 1v1 a Space Marine, and even if Space Marines come out on top like the majority of the time, or even like 7 out of 10 times, Tyranid warriors are no joke, and bone swords are capable of cutting straight through ceramite. Hell, even in some stories, the las guns are able to like pierce ceramite if they're properly overcharged. Eldar or Necrons, Khorne or Slaanesh Space Marines. I'm not super up to date on the 41st Millennium. I'm still reading the Horus Heresy, but I'd like to see more vile and brutal Space Marines like Word Bearers or World Eaters, Night Lords, and Iron Warriors. 1,000 Suns seems a little too PG-13 in Space Marine 2. Maybe that's just me. 1,000 Suns do kind of feel like a Halo faction, but so do the Tau. Nurgle Death Guard, also a good idea. It would be cool to see Death Guard in like the actual when I think about how pretty Space Marine 2 can actually be and how much better looking Space Marine 3 probably will be, probably not that much, but it would be cool to see the Nurgle Death Guard. Orks and World Eaters, Necrons and Chaos, base model picture. Necrons and I really want a Warhammer game like Space Marine or Dark Tide, or one can play as the Sisters of Battle. All right, Gooners, all Gooners shall be banned from this point forward. There's no Goon. I'm tired. Like, what is up with you people? I want to play the Sisters of Battle. Okay, that's not happening. It's not. I want to actually ban you. It was a joke, but that's not happening. We're not playing as Sisters of Battle. What is wrong with you people? Necrons, please God, Necrons. Necrons, I'm sure Tzeentch will return. Word bearers. Yeah, actually, you know what? On the note of people saying they want to play as Sisters of Battle, somebody came to the stream chat the other day and they were like, I'm tired of all these people wanting to play as Sisters of Battle. I'm like, who the fuck is this person talking about? But apparently they are real. These people are real. They do want to play as Sisters of Battle. If you want to do that, play Rogue Trader. And then not there's anything wrong with wanting to play the Sisters Battle. Other than that, you might be a Gooner. I'm just saying. Chaos Undivided or the Black Legions, just like how in Dawn of War 2, where they have Slaanesh Noise Marines, Coordinate Chaos Lord, Tzeentch Sorcerer, and Plague Marines. At least we get to fight all 4 gods chosen at the same time again. That would be kind of cool. Having a proper Tzeentch Sorcerer would be pretty neat, because all we get are like the lesser Sorcerer bums in this one, and Plague Marines do have a cool design. World Eaters would go so hard. Orks or Tyranids would be amazing. I'm quite disappointed about Space Marine 3 already being announced and being worked on. I don't think they said it's being worked on. I think they said it's being announced. I spent many hours in Space Marine 2 grinding. I was hoping for much longer future content like new classes and new enemy factions. Well, you are getting a new class. Do people read? Even with some paid DLC, this you are getting all of this. Well, maybe not the new enemy factions, but you are getting this. But now I know I just kind of wasted my time grinding for nothing. If you're not enjoying playing the game, you're always grinding for nothing. Get a life as entertainment, not your job. Well, it's for some. Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself. But definitely agree. Tyranids, Necrons, or Death Guard. Necrons, Eldar, and for Chaos, I love anyone, but I love to fight Khorne. Khornelings, Tyranids, and Nurglings. I was about to say, on the note of this, just this person, we're not going to get this. I don't know if some people actually read the patch notes or like the updates for this game, but you are going to be getting new classes. Like, you're at least getting one for sure. And they are coming out with more paid DLCs. They're coming out with a whole new season pass. And they did not say they were actually working on Space Marine 3 yet, but personally, I would rather them just move on to Space Marine 3 and make that game as good as possible than like spend time at building up Space Marine 2 and then inevitably drop it for Space Marine 3 anyways. That's just me though. I'd rather than put make Space Marine 3 the live service and just make this one like a like an asset flip. I don't really care. I don't think the DLCs in Space Marine 2 are all that expensive anyways, and it doesn't really bother me if I'm being honest. Necrons, Eldar, and for Chaos, I love anyone, but I love to fight Khorne, Khornelings, Tyranids, Nurglings, Redditors. All right, someone's been on the internet too much. I want to play some Xenos, you know what I mean? I honestly don't mind a mid-mash of all Chaos Legion. Make it like if we fight a Black Crusade and multiple war bands of different legions come together. Imagine watching as one of your buddies fighting off a World Eater Berserker and Word Bearer, Gal Vorback, Demon Possessed Marine while getting shot at by a Black Legion as your other buddy, Rusty Iron Warrior. You're probably not going to have that, but it would be kind of interesting. Necrons 100% if you had to add a Chaos faction, World Eaters. Yeah, I would like to see World Eaters. Necrons are probably going to be seen for sure. I know Nurgle was already the enemy faction in Dark Tide, but seeing the Death Guard put to the screen in a game would be a dream come true, to be honest. That is true. Death Guard, you know, over the period of this entire reading, I have come to actually want the Death Guard in this game. So yes, Death Guard would be quite neat because they would look really cool in the actual game's graphics. Death Guard and Nurgles are represented in 40k media, but the model line in DG is the most conducive to any enemy faction with definable roles, elites, and vehicles. That is a good point. That is actually a good point. Drukhari, yes, that's the first Drukhari comment I've seen in a little bit. Whoever decided to abandon Space Marine 2 and jump ship already for the sequel, that would be a fire boss fight. I don't think they jumped ship from Space Marine 2. I just think they never intended to actually support Space Marine 2 as much as they are. In fact, because of Space Marine 2's success, you're probably getting Space Marine 3 and more content with the Season 2 pass than you ever would have initially with what they intended for Space Marine 2. Because I'm pretty sure Space Marine 2's main plan was just like the one roadmap we had, and now you're getting a whole other one because of the success. So I'm not really too mad about them just moving on to Space Marine 3 at some point, because we're still going to be getting content for Space Marine 2. Chaos World Eaters and Khorne Demons. I ain't reading all that. We're too late in, but thanks for spacing your paragraphs. I'll come back one day. People saying, all right, this guy didn't space his paragraph. Sorry. Chaos, Black Legion, or World Eaters, Xenos, Necrons, or Gene Stealer cults. Definitely a good choice. Orks, Orks, Orks. Of course, you're going to the thumbnail. We don't need a new Space Marine 3 this soon. What we need is more content for 2. Why not both? Because it's about Ultramarines, I'd say Word Bearers and Orks. Orks with today's graphics, the server would be pretty nice. They would definitely be really cool. They also look really good, like ultra wide settings and stuff like that. As long as it ain't a second half Twist Chaos faction. Unfortunately, they only have one plot twist in all the Space Marine games, and it's, hey, guess what? Chaos. Necrons and Tyranids for Space Marine 3 would go hard, me boy. Fire emoji. Yeah, definitely would. Slaanesh faction, Emperor's Children, or Orks. Orks. Chaos is the most boring choice, but it makes the most sense for the story. I'd love for there to be 3 or 4 enemy types, if not for the story, at least for operations. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. All of them. If they can balance any faction that has range units, I'm happy with any. It'd be painful if it is Necrons or Tau if they cannot do it right, seeing how bad and unfun it is to fight against Chaos right now. At least the developers did say they know that Chaos was not very fun to fight, and I imagine they'll definitely make sure like they're less painful, because they can clearly design a faction like Tyranids to be interesting to fight in both melee and range. Like, people complain about Devourers and Space Marine 2 all the time, but they really aren't that bad. I was like, once they actually learn how to dodge them. Necrons would be nice, and Tyranids shall stay as the main enemy. Death Guard, Humanity. I honestly want the Dark Mechanicum. That would be kind of neat. One other person did mention this earlier. Make the Chaos faction and the World Eaters so we have Chaos Space Marines to fight in melee. Yes, World Eaters. A lot of people want World Eaters for sure. Orks again, Gene Stealers and more Chaos. Drukhari, I'm a base Drukhari fan. They are really cool in Rogue Trader, so if you want to see that, definitely play that game. I want to see Sisters involved somehow. No matter what is up with everyone wants to see Sisters in battle. Everybody. I mean, it would be kind of neat to have a cameo, I guess, but like the people want to be played, that's not happening. World Eaters and more different Tyranid types, pepper and some Gene Stealer cultists. Any melee enemy, to be honest. More melee Majoris and Extremis is welcome anytime in my book. Orks and Necrons or Word Bearers, or World Eater, World Bearer. Tyranids, Orks, a Dark Eldar, and Night Lords. The Night Lords would be pretty fucking cool. Orks, Nurgle, Necrons for Xenos. As for Chaos, I have 3 options: World Eaters, Word Bearers, or the Black Legion. I really thought this guy was going to say Emperor's Children. I'm not going to lie, after everyone else in this list. It's literally just Orks or Nids. Nothing else remotely works. I mean, I'm sure they'll come out with something else. They could make it work. They just have to do it properly. Rework the health and armor system in any faction that makes sense. Like, really, all you'd have to do, this is a true comment, all you'd have to do is just fix the combat system of the game and the range combat loop, and any faction could work. Like, nobody said that in Space Marine 3 the contested health system has to be absolutely fucked like it is in this one, or like the time to kill has to remain exactly the same. Let's just get that mod support in the first, and I'll consider what I want from Space Marine 3. And I'm pretty sure they already have mod support in, or they're about to. Hot take, keep them the same-ish, complete Titus' story, considering even the Amazon episode involves Zinj. Let that story play out. Titus is clearly blessed, literally, so Chaos has to be involved, so an undivided Chaos warband, or just more Zinj shenanigans seems appropriate. This is true, Jasper. This is definitely true, that Titus is blessed by probably the actual fucking God Emperor, so Chaos coming in when, like, Chaos fucking hates the God Emperor of mankind, because, you know, he did on, who was Mortis, he did take their power from them at some point, or stolen power, or stole something from the warp from the Chaos Gods, on top of still being alive. They didn't properly kill him, they didn't put him on the throne, but the God Emperor is still alive, and he is currently blessing Titus, potentially. So then that is true. Necrons, Death Guard Tau, Eldar, and Black Legion. The real answer is all of them. We need a Zambit boss fight. Nah, that would be too overpowered. The Zambit aim skill would go crazy. Word Bearers and either Necrons or Eldar. Nurgle Legion. Necrons, OMG, Necrons, please. Gene Stealer cults, Necrons, and World Eaters. A lot of you guys want the same factions, that is for sure. And this guy says Tyranids should make a return. They definitely will. Dark Eldar or Necrons, World Eaters, and Drukhari. And the last one is Necrons and Tau. Really trying to piss me off with the final comment. Okay, that is all like 400-ish comments on this entire thread. I know some of these were actually replies. That took forever. Thank you guys who are actually still here watching. And hopefully, you know, hopefully the next one. I did make like a weapons one too that I'm gonna read over at some point. But yeah, I'm afraid how many comments and paragraphs are going to be in that one. But thanks for everyone who posted here, and it wasn't like a bot comment. But besides that, that's pretty much all I have to say in this one. And if you're still here at the end of the video because you're an absolute legend and you watched all whatever fucking like 1.5 hours, 2 hours of this, subscribe for more, I guess, and take it easy. Peace.